At least he's honest.
Yeah,
You're gonna pay
I
attention
was
this
also
time.
so excited then I did not hear you at all.
So maybe it's not as good as you all think it is.
Yeah,
You might
no.
say.
It was a stressful day for all of us,
Yes.
so we really didn't get a chance to
Yeah,
really
to listen to
So
what
now
you're
you
talking.
could really critique it, I think.
Exactly.
And say, okay,
Now we're
really,
gonna
no,
listen.
that's really crap. We said it was pretty good, but I don't know.
I remember it being really good.
Yeah, okay. Aubrey was the only
I
one
love
who was
I
able
was
to
the only
focus
one
on what you were
paying
talking about.
I'm the
Okay.
angel.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, we ready?
I think so.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm not gonna be here. Okay, ready?
Do you want to introduce this?
Yes,
It's your-
I'm going
it's
to
your
introduce,
seminar.
yeah,
Yeah, you
I'm
should
going to
introduce
introduce the seminar. So welcome to our South UM seminar. First seminar in on active learning, teaching of and teaching of undergraduate mathematics. Thank you all for coming, and more people will come as we are informed. So, but anyways, we will start. Our first seminar talk is by Dr. Rizzo from our department, Mathematics and Statistics at Georgia State. And her talk is related to BioCalculus class, and the title is, as you can see, a classroom flip that is reflective and pedagogy and assessment to promote increased student engagement. So welcome, Rebecca, and thank you for opening this whole forum for discussion, right?
I'm really excited to be here, and the exciting part for me is to share, just to kind of share the ideas I've had, and I've been doing it in class. And I love the idea of the seminar because it's now a sharing place where we can all kind of share ideas that we've all been doing, and we all are doing amazing things in the classroom, but we all have tight teaching schedules and we can't get into each other's class to sit and watch for the time and kind of get this idea. So the idea of disseminating these nice bits and pieces throughout is great, because in our department, everybody has to teach. No matter if you're a grad student or a faculty member, you have a teaching component, and so this is so valuable. And I think that in 2016, there's so much competition for the students' attention that if we all have little pieces and nuts and bolts to share, we can all devise something that works for our personality in front of the students. And these students are not taking online classes, they're in our classes for some part of it. So I feel personally responsible for engaging them. And a big buzzword was flip your classroom, flip it, so that they do some outside work and then they come into your classroom well prepared. And I've been teaching math since, okay, I'll just say 24 years. And I started off in 7th grade. So, you know they really don't care about math at all, really. But the idea of engaging them became really important at that time, and I learned that students can do math, and so when the anxiety starts to set in, and you see that later on, and now in college I see it, I feel like there's a way to diffuse that, and I'm up in front of them. That's my job if they come to a face-to-face class time. So I wanted to figure out how I could flip it so that it wasn't scary. Because to tell people, go learn it on your own and come back, we all know that that just increases anxiety. So, and they have absolutely no map. You kind of can give them some information and they can guide and look, but it's tough. So in 2012, Drs. Miller and Dixon came together with a multidisciplinary faculty group, including Dr. Derby, a few other people from neuroscience as well as biology and chemistry, to put together a new course called BioCalculus, or Calculus for the Life Science majors. And it still houses all of those concepts of Calculus 1, but it needs to be different, and so the content was made, and then I said, ooh, I really love to get involved in that. What does that mean? Because my degree, my PhD is dynamical systems, and I don't think there's anything more dynamic than education. Because the people that come in front of you semester to semester are different. They're different day to day, and being able to flow and change with that, I love that part of it. So that's where my research ended. So I did dynamical systems math stuff. Now I model what my students do. And so up to this point, it was all about the engineering calculus, 2211. What happens there? They struggle. they struggle with the concepts that are taught. We whiz through it pretty fast. They muddle through procedures. They have no idea how it's connected to anything else other than the course itself. They don't really interact with their instructor because they're already so stressed and fearful in the class. We used to have a very high percentage of repeaters that has since gone down because of a lot of students ending the course with DSWS. And as a result, instead of looping through that course many times, I've been at Georgia State 15 years and I've seen so many students come to me and say, I really wanted to be a pediatrician. I thought I could do calculus, but I'm just going to go business. But I changed my major, and that creates a glass ceiling for some students, and it makes me sad as an educator because I feel like that should not be happening, and if I could help that, that's really important. And the lack of portability. When they get these tools, what do they do with them? You can integrate, differentiate, limit, what are those things, and how do you see them? What are they? So I found this cartoon because this is kind of like it, you know, the librarian's like, who's putting all the math books in the horror section of the library? It's kind of like that. It's like a horror film coming in to the class for them, and I thought I didn't really want it to be that way. So when BioCal came on the records, I asked Dr. Dixon, how could I approach this differently? I have a totally different audience, and my undergraduate degree is in math education with my math minor. So I wanted to know how could I infuse some of the things I already knew. Now, so it was multidisciplinary, and there needed to be an applied approach. Okay, so I thought, oh, okay, that's great, I know that. That's my PhD is applied math, that's great. But it can't be that different because it is calculus after all. You know, it's not going to be rainbows, butterflies, and some unicorns thrown in. Like, it's still going to be rigorous, but how do I get that? So the scientists, meeting with the scientists that summer in 2012, I did some research, and they all said, has to be word problem based. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I said, all right, so I'll put together some lessons in the summer. I'll put a little mini grant together, and we'll get a panel of mathematicians and some scientists that are grad students, and they'll give me feedback on how my lessons go. And I found out very quickly I stink. I stunk at this and I failed terribly because I got up and I thought, oh, a word problem. And I found this really great word problem and I referenced it right here. And it was all about how the population of lions, maybe in the African savannah, are connected to prey, which eat other things. So there's this food chain thing going on. So I have lions, right? They have prey eat other things, and the other things need to grow because of vegetation, and then the vegetation only grows when rainfall goes by. So I had this interconnection with composition of functions. I thought, oh, that's really great, and I'll give them some information. And then everybody was like, yeah, I like the words, and the math's great, but where are the pictures? And I was like, picture of what? What are you talking about? Like, and they were like, science people need pictures. And I said, oh, you mean like that? Like, should it be fun, or should it be realistic? Like, I didn't really know. Like, and so then I started to do just more research from the student perspective. Like, what do they want to see? And I was like, well, they kind of need a connection between something like, who doesn't love the Lion King, right? That's something that's not stressful at all. And they could look at that and go, oh, yeah, I get it. And then in looking at books, they had a bunch of pictures too, but they were still all mathy looking, and I didn't know how they really kind of connected. Because here's the word problem, here's the picture, here's the question. And so I thought, okay, something's still missing. There's like this, it seems really robotic. And I thought, okay, so I did some more research myself, but then I landed in Dr. Vidakovic's theory course for undergraduate collegiate mathematics research and mathematics education. And I thought, oh my gosh, this APOS theory is amazing. And I'm still learning a lot, reading the book, because as people learn mathematics, they go through this process. And I'm finding most students are right here at the process level. I have a function, you give me a number, I know what to do with it. I plug it in, I get it, I plug it in, I get it. But there's still a lot of hitches in just that process. They just know what to do with it. They really don't have any concept of when I would ever need the cosine function again. Out in real life, do I see the cosine function? Is it like the Matrix? You know, the movie The Matrix, where you're like, oh, I see it in front of my face, right? Like, you kind of want to get students kind of excited about it, right? So, no, they weren't seeing that. And then as I was reading more, this whole idea that Piaget comes up with, which is what APOS theory is based kind of this is where I need to be corrected because this is not my area of research. But I wanted to somehow connect this reflective abstraction into that. And according to Piaget's definition, it's the awareness and contemplative thought of content and the operations on that content. But then after you know the content so well, the content falls away and the operations themselves become the content. So you flip it. So what happens is instead of operating on a function, the function actually will become the operation. And that's what calculus is. Because I'm operating on a function, I'm limiting them. I'm taking the derivative of them. I'm integrating them. And I thought, oh, that would be really great if I could get them to be motivated enough to want to do that. And so then I thought, how do I do that? I don't know how to do that. So then I started thinking more, and then through some colleagues, I got some really great wording. So I have the whole idea of a picture. They have to get their interest. And then, well, you know, if you could get the students to talk about something that they don't know anything about and use that class time for that, instead of me telling them, have them come. And they always come with a blank sheet of paper, don't you love? They have a big sheet of paper, they're ready for it to write down everything you say, like, because somehow I have something really great to say. And I'm really important, and I'm really not that important, because in 2016, they have so many more resources than I had in 1990 doing my own degree. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm not saying anything super fancy, but if they could start having some ideas themselves, Google, Wikipedia it, Wolfram Alpha it, maybe they'll be interested in it somehow. So this way they can develop their own connections, like, oh, okay, algebra takes me only this far, so what else do I need? You know, and absolute zero, we all know zero is not absolute zero, it's a limiting value anyway. You never get zero. We talk about Selsun Blue, you know the commercials, how come they don't show you 0 dandruff flakes on the split screen? Well, because everybody sheds hair. They shed their hair, they shed. There's gonna be a limiting value of 0, but it should be the minimum amount, right? Like, so it's almost 0, but not totally exactly 0. So they get this idea of what the mathematicians talk about when they talk about extraction. Like, it's not exactly 0. Yeah, there has to be some type of energy in there. It's not totally 0. So they're getting the idea, and I'm talking to them in their language. And so I'm learning a lot too. I've learned a lot. So what I started looking at was, well, what my new goal is to flip it is this way. So I'm going to flip it so that I facilitate and foster lifelong learning by investigating and infusing pedagogy changes and positive student engagement opportunities. So I have to provide those types of things within that curriculum, and that's easy to do. And I thought, okay, I should be able to figure out how to do it. So I split it up into 3 pieces. So there was a pedagogy piece I needed to flip, the time in class, the face-to-face time, as well as the assessment part. So this way, if they're going to come to class and engage, then I'm going to motivate them to finish their work later, not figure it out later. So many students will come to class and go, I'll figure this out later, like just give me the notes and I'll rush off and I'll work at home. And in isolation, somehow figure this out, YouTube it out. So now I feel like I'm empowering them to want to engage in class, and they'll finish their work later. And I like that because it's much more positive. So I figured it was more responsible for me to show them the whole piece of how many ways I'm going to change so that they're coming to the table as well, and they're going to be working. So what that first shift looks like in pedagogy was, instead of what, how, and why, y'all know it, today you're coming in, we're going to do section 3.5, chain rule. And if there's time, I'll show you why you need it. Like maybe there's a word problem. So they're going to be learning these tools, but I flipped it exactly the opposite. So they come in, every class there's a question. So there's a motivation. And then here's how you might do it. And they're already starting that. They're starting the process, they're talking about what they don't know, and I got this, or I got that, and why don't you try it like this, how about you try it like that? Because they've come into college, they've taken so many standardized tests, that's all they know. Where do you want my name? Right corner, left corner, bottom, front, back, what do you want? I mean, they're just so ready to follow directions that they have to break out of that mold, and mathematics is the perfect place to do that. That free thinking, the curiosity, the inspiration. They're not going to succeed in their sciences if they're not curious about it all. So generating that and having them talk about it is really great. Different perspectives, different people, I love that. And then here's how you do it. So we correct whatever needs to be corrected, or sometimes they figure it out themselves. This week we talked about anti-differentiation. They all figured it out themselves. They inversed the whole entire process. They added 1 to the power, divided by the new number, and they were done. One kid was like, wait a second, what if it was a constant? They did the plus C themselves. It was genius and so fun to watch that, and all I have to do is be quiet. And that's the hardest part, because I'm so excited, I want to tell them, but I have to let them go through that process. And in 15 minutes, they did the rule themselves. And I might have done it in 5 minutes, but the value of those extra 10 minutes now threads them for the next 4 weeks of class. And those were really great pieces I'm learning as well. They're uncomfortable, but I thought this was working for me. So the student buy-in was where I was having a tough time, because I'm not a scientist, I'm a mathematician, so trying to figure out how do I motivate them, what are some places where I can find inspiration for them. So when they come into class, what do I give them? And so I started off with a couple things myself, but everything was open-ended. Here's a question, here's a topic, or here's a picture, what do you see, what do you want to see? And sometimes they're just perspective pieces where one's a cow, but they don't know it because it's kind of pixelated, and you gotta kind of like cross your eyes or let your eyes fall asleep before you actually see that there's a black and white cow, a little milk cow staring at you, or the old lady, young lady, you know, those from psychology. And it's trying to get them to use both sides of their brain at the same time and show each other what you see. And sometimes it's just about, okay, now that you know there's a different perspective, let's talk about something else. Because the other part of math is there's so many different ways to come to that one right answer, they hate us for that. Because in science, you just titrate one way, and everybody gets a different shade of pink. I don't care who you are, right? Like, so now, it's like, wait a minute. In high school, everybody had the same way to do it, because there was one teacher with 40 students. Do it this way, add one to both sides, da, 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 da. When there's allowability for free thinking, and that's painful for some of them, because it's not safe. So to provide that safe environment is really important, but I'm cashing in on their curiosity, because they're science people. Aren't you curious about that? So that they want to find an answer. They're going to pull out their iPhone, and they're going to pull out their iPad. And they're going to Google and find it. Okay, so, and there's a lot of open-ended problems that haven't been solved. So I'm like, hey. And so now students are coming to me with, hey, I found a good one. Hey, I found a good one. And those are really cool things to see when they're like, oh, I found a problem. Do you know the answer? And no, I don't. I really don't. But I was really humbled when I finished my PhD, because I had an amazing advisor, and he said, now that you've finished your PhD, this is where it starts. And I was like, well really? Like I thought I was an expert. No. And I was like, wow, like it was such a humbling thing, and I was so glad he did that, because I've learned so much just from students of all ages, of all people. They all give me such great advice. So to be open to all of this is also really hard. So what happened was this talk, right, with my picture and my boring words became this. So all I have on the screen is just this picture. And then active lecturing is what it's called, when you get that student to buy in and you get them motivated, you get them working. And so I have my own little way of doing it, but there's an actual 8-step procedure that Terry Doyle at Ferris State University uses, and it's quite popular, and he's got a great website I have it referenced here, so that you could kind of take a look at what does actual active lecturing look like. Because it's back and forth, and there's talking going on, and it's loud, it seems unorganized, and it feels uncomfortable at first, because it's not necessarily controlled, but they're all talking about math. They're not Facebooking, they're not YouTubing. If they're YouTubing, they're looking up a place where they can actually see the mechanism. They forgot it. They forgot how to take that derivative. What's the derivative of sine? I forgot. So they're looking that up, and I love that they're doing that. And they're not just standing there waiting and staring at you for the answer like they do. Don't they do that a lot? And they wait. And I feel like to have that courage in them to do that, that's really, to me, I feel successful. That's my pinging of success. I measure my success in the classroom by that. So I wanted to see more of that. So I'll ask them, what do you see? And then they get to look and write a couple things down, talk to each other, a couple minutes. And I use my phone a lot for timers, so the timer goes off, we're done. Now, next question. If we wanted to measure the rate of change in predators, and we call the predator the lion, how could you go about doing that? Because now you're quantifying something. Now, somebody will say derivative, because they're like, that's not right. Well, how do you do that? How do you break it down? Because that's the part of math that they don't get in K-12. We tell them 1/5 plus 1/5 is 2/5. Right? Yeah, 2/5. And then, oh, what if we're not the same denominator? Here's how you do it. But what if it was 5/6? Give me 2 fractions that add to that. You blew their mind. Because they're like, well, wait, what are some different ways I could do it? I could have same denominators, non-denominators, they're the same. And now they're going to a place of the brain that has a lot of cobwebs. And it was there in K3. It was there in K3, and then we killed them. Okay? Because I have a third grader, I have a fifth grader, and they're like, well, Mom, I could do it. I said, exactly, do it your way. Be creative, keep it fun. Put the fun in function. It's supposed to be that way, you know? And so I'm trying to get these students to come back into it and enjoy it and smile in class. So these were really important pieces to me, and so then we break it down. And it's painful. Like I say, the first 4 weeks are anger management. Because you're not giving them anything anymore. I'm not giving it. Now, they interrupt me when I'm talking. Poof, poof, poof. All right, put it up there, put it up there. And I love that they do it. I love that they argue. They argue the points. Isn't that a typo in the book? Maybe. I'm not really sure. Hang on a second. I didn't work every problem. Let's work that out. I love that. Like that was yesterday. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I'm going to check that problem out. I'm going to email everybody. That makes me smile. Or they'll take a picture of something that they saw online and send it to me. Hey, put this up for next week's question. And I start to give them bonus points for that because now they're on the lookout for it. Or in my PChem class, I saw this. Or in my Orgo class, I saw that. And these are really great pieces. So in breaking it down, they go back to their function notation. And so name what you have. What's the word, what's the letter, and then give the function. And we take a minute to do that. This is where they're developing the building skills, the building blocks of math. Because I keep telling them, if you complain about math, you have to complain about science, because we only go where you lead us. If your science is ugly, then the ugliness will follow in math, and you've got to be fluent in the language of science. That's mathematics. I said it's really important that you're doing that, and that's going to empower you. That makes you a really powerful scientist when you have that sixth sense coming up. That doesn't really make sense because I should have had a bigger number and not a smaller number. My negative was on the derivative. I should be decreasing and increasing. And those are really powerful pieces they can say to themselves when they see the inner workings. So after we come through here, someone will invariably say, I'm looking for dPdt or P prime. But P, capital P, is going to be only time goes by. And they're going to have to say, well, how do I thread through these values? And then we get to talk about, oh, well, hang on a second. If I were to take the derivative of capital P, what do you get? They'll say, oh, you get P prime of little p. Write it another way. Okay, yeah, okay, so that's dP, capital DT. And then someone else will say, well, I also need to know the change in prey, because prey eat bugs, you know? Because when you're looking at this, when they talk to you, it's really funny, because they'll say, oh, it's the Lion King. And I'm like, I don't know why he's smiling there. He could be smiling at the warthog because he's hungry. You know? Like, so these are really great things where you can start to develop, well, if the lion eats the warthog's going to eat the bugs that are under those rocks. And those rocks sit on vegetation, and vegetation is there because rain fell. And rain fell because I waited long enough for time to go by. So then they go, oh my God, there's a story. They hear the story and they go, okay, I get that. And so then up here, they go through all the derivatives and they agree that each of these notations makes sense. We do that. And then, as the expert in mathematics, we say, there is an amazing rule, because remember, this is applied. And the next question is the students go, how do all these things get connected? And then we say, well, here's the really great rule, and it's not really magical. So the change in predators as prey changes, the change in prey as bugs change, the change in bugs as rainfall changes, and the change in rain as time goes by. And we talk to them, at least I do, that I put these pieces together, put these differentials together through multiplication, and shockingly enough, it's called chain rule. You're like, oh, I remember the name. And then that's where I flip and go, here's a reference where you can look through. Here's a great YouTube video that shows a little bit of the theory of why that works. That's what I push out of the class. And then they're like, oh, okay, I get the multiplication thing, because you want them to get multiplication. You don't want them to start adding weird stuff together. So it's multiplication, and then I talked to them about dimensional analysis. You guys are all scientists. You have to change from moles, remember all that stuff. You got to go, well, yeah, and you get to have this whole idea of, yes, I found this threaded through time, because time threads through everybody. And then they go, oh, yeah, and everything comes back to, okay, that's a Lion King problem, right? That's a Lion King problem. Because they have this picture in their head, and they're starting to see how one piece threads through. So one variable threads everybody, but how does that one change change rainfall, then rainfall changes the bugs change spread, prey change spread. So you have this domino effect. And they start to see that mechanically in the math. And that's the connection I wanted to make when they were learning these tools. Because they don't have it. They're like, well, do I add for a chain rule, multiply for a chain rule? They don't know why they're doing it, so then that's how it gets lost. And so I thought that was really great. And so when I asked them, how did you do it? They're like, oh, I have composition of functions. And then somebody will invariably go, well, capital P depends on little p depends on little b depends on r depends on t. And so they have this big mess. And I would like dp, capital, dt. So it has to thread through everybody till it gets to the inner. And they'll start to see this whole idea inside the mechanics. And I love that. And they talk about this stuff. And so they construct their own idea of how to do chain rule. And so this is what one student told me. They follow the changes in the food chain using the chain rule for differentiation. And I love that they used the word change in differentiation because that's what differentiation is. It measures your changes. It's the whole idea of calculus. How does a change in one variable affect another? So in class time, what does that look like? So here I have a nice picture. This is from last semester, my BioCalc 1 class. So we talk a little bit and then we do. And so I have them move your desk, get up and move your body, and be with people, work some problems, put them on the board, and I'll have 3 or 4 on the board that I want them to work out. And this is them doing unguided work. Because it's easy to tell them how to do stuff and they follow, but to be able to assess them later independently, I have to let them practice. But I'm still hanging around, I'm lurking. So I'm walking around, I want to see what they're doing, and they're chit-chatting. Some of them have their phones out, they're on technology. Some of them come up and end up using the computer if they need. And sometimes right out the gate, like you'll see, like the computer isn't even on because right out the gate I said, get in your seats. I have a question for you, and I had a question on the board. So just as a newspaper clipping, just something like, what do you think about that? What do you think about this graph right here? What's wrong with it? What's good about it? And so then they start mathematicating out. I changed office hours. I moved where I actually am because the whole traditional, like I come and see you in your ivory tower for answers, doesn't work anymore because I'm trying to make it so that it's approachable. I'm approachable. I have a positive outlook. I have a positive rapport with students. I want them to feel good about what they're doing and make them feel empowered. And I want them to feel like they have their own confidence and they have something to give. Because a lot of times when they come to math, they're like, well, I don't know what I'm doing anyway, I'm just going to get in and go. So we're now in Kell Hall, and this is Dr. Dixon's kind enough to allow us the conference room, and the assistants there are fabulous because they'll always say, yeah, go ahead, no, there's a conference, yes, there is. So now I need 10 chairs, because sometimes I have 10 to 12 people, and they're up on the board, they're writing stuff down. If you look really close, she's smiling, right there. So I love that, because they're working with each other and they're talking to each other. And I do know that people retain 98% of what they explain to somebody else. That means they really understand it. And understand it and explain it simply is the best. And so I'm also listening to them, and I'm correcting them, and only where it needs to be corrected. And so I'm staying out of it. So my office hours are for them to have a hangout spot. Sometimes they bring lunch, sometimes it's coffee. And it's nice because it's friendly. It's very... I'm assuming it doesn't seem like math at all. The last piece is my grading. How do I grade these people? And so these are really great pieces too that I have stolen from someplace else because my child is in a school system where they don't get letters, they get numbers. It's like, what's with the numbers? What? My kid has a 3. Like, what's a 3? Like, is it GPA 3? Is it a 4? So it's not really GPA related at all. What it is the level of mastery. How well does that student understand the material? From not at all to a minimum amount all the way up through complete and total knowledge. Okay? Now, if you're looking at a problem, say it's the definition of a derivative, and it's blank, okay, that's a 0. The minimum that they have is the limit as h approaches 0, and then they write the f of x plus h minus f of x. They have the difference quotient in there. They kind of have it. That's where I start. Developing. They kind of went through the process, sort of, but they might have missed huge chunks, and they're struggling. You can see them looping in there. They're about halfway there. So they're about halfway. understanding it. Moderate, they've set it up properly, they put the function in properly, and then something went awry. They didn't take the limit, they forgot to go back to it, they dropped off the limit notation, now all of a sudden they have some relation in it. The final very end would be that they completed the whole entire problem, start to finish, they started with a different function, they worked it through, they took the limit, and they have an actual function that is the derivative. They've worked it out in that theoretical sense. So you could kind of get an idea of what happens. So when these students get a test back, it has a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 for every single problem that has to be graded. There's no negative sign on that paper at all. It's all positive. And they go, well, how many points did I get? Well, you tell me. You're a mathematician. You're in this class. You could tell me. So if this is a 10-point problem and you had a 4, that's a 4 out of 4. That's 100%. So you get 100% of the points. And what happens is they learn that the points are a result of what I know. No one comes, why did you take off points? Why did you give me? I don't give or take anything from them anymore. This is not a relationship of give and take. My job is to objectively tell you, assess your knowledge at this point right now at the test. So I have a little cheat sheet, so I show you my little cheat sheet here. If it's 5 points, 4 to 4, that's 100%, okay? All the way down, okay? So all the way up through like an 11-point problem. And sometimes, man, you know, they were doing really good, but somehow messed up a negative sign. You know? So that's not a 4, because 4 is a 4. We're mathematicians, right? So 3.5 is okay. Like, I don't want them to lose a lot of points. So if they had some really weird things going on. And so this is them now asking me, how do I get a 4? How do I get a 4 on that? You really thought I got a 4, but I got a 3. And so they'll even say, you gave me a 3. No, I assessed you at a 3, you're correct. But here's where it went wrong. And they're like, oh, they argue that, and I love that. And every single test, they have to rework and bring it back in. It's a quiz grade for everybody. That's the reflection part. I'm pushing it back. So I'm making them rework every single problem that they didn't have a 4 on. Why didn't you get a 4? What did you do that you needed to correct? And they're asking questions of each other, they're asking questions of me, and it counts as a quiz grade because it's time. If it's significantly poor, there's one time where they'll actually be able to use some points. Say, I would like to get some of my points back. So I spend a lot of time regrading these things. So what happens is sometimes if the test grade they get 1, everybody loves an under the table deal. I give it. Here's your under the table deal. 1 test. When you turn it in after you rework it, if you want half of those points back, you have to get 100 on the regrade, and then you can get half the points you lost back. So if they had, say, a 60 on the test, because it was just a tough day, they had an orgo test that day with my calc test, they'll come in and rework the whole thing because they knew it, and then get 100 on that, they can change that score to an 80. But they only get that week's time to do it. So then they start becoming active in how they're learning it, and they're now planning. They're planning it out. Okay, now I'm going to use my under the table deal on test 2. But the great part is, for instance, we had test 3 before break in BioCalc 1. Test 1 was great because it was chapter 1. Chapter 1's all review. Every kind of function, how they act. Test 2 was the first calculus test. Average plummeted. It went from an average of like a 78 on the test way down to a 62. And they were horrified and shocked. Because we're now in week 6 or 7. And I was like, this is your first calculus test. And that's okay. But remember my under the table deal? You still have to rework that anyway. Rework it in 7 days. You bring that to me. I'll regrade it for you. I'm working for you. And most of them wanted half the points back. So the average shot up. But on test 2, which was tough, and you guys know of calculus, graphing, max, mins, critical values, optimization, parametric functions, average 85. And that's real. So I know reflection works. It's a lot of work. I spend a lot of hours grading, regrading, but they're coming office hours and they're working hard, and I know that reflection changed. So they got that grade honest. Because no one's standing behind them giving them the grade. And even though they all walked out of that test cursing my name, I hate you. You made that test so hard. And I was like, I know, yeah. But then I gave them all back yesterday. I'm like, oh, you crybabies. And they were shocked. Like shocked at how well. Some of them had a perfect score on the test. And I didn't think they did. And so now that's really great for test 4 and the final because their confidence is there, they know what they need. And that's Calc 1. But for the life science Calc 2, if we're doing that the whole entire time, we're doing the same exact thing in life science 2, with just much different structure. The structure is different because it's more survey. in a sense that we cover 5 different topics. We'll cover matrix theory, we'll cover multivariate calculus, we'll do some differential equations, and we'll do 4 separate areas, and we'll do probability statistics. So towards the middle of the course, when we're doing multivariate calculus, which I love very much, I said, let me give them a project. Because Dr. Dixon told me of the curve over in the library. I was like, what is that? And this huge screen with 24 different monitors, and the whole thing is touch. I said, wouldn't that be great if these students could do some calculus with some data, because they're all data people. They're going to get data, they'll have a question, they'll hypothesize it, try to get an answer, but they've got to do something quantitative in the middle. So I said, go get some data. And my directions were intentionally vague. I said, this is going to be 20 points onto your test. So when you come into the class, it'll only be an 80-point test. And you'd be shocked at how many times they ask, it's only 80 points, it's 80 points. What do you mean? 80 points in class, 20 points outside of class. But I assigned this in October, this past October, right? I said, we're not going to present till the end of November. Okay, I got the curve all set, I got to review. And I said, okay, so here's what you're going to do. You got to collect some data, at least 4 ordered pairs. And then you're going to use linearization on that multivariate data and get me the line of best fit. But you got to make the line of best fit, so you got to have to do some analysis, right, with the multivariate. There's some partial derivatives going on, and that's what we're teaching. We've covered all that. And so I simply said, here's what I expect. I want a scatter plot, and then on that scatter plot, I want you to draw in the model of your best fit line and tell me what it is, y equals supposed to be. Give me the formula. Okay, what you get from your paper, show me your work. That's a piece of paper, right? And then what does Excel say? Did you get what Excel says? And if you did any research or references, cite your resources, because you have to say where you got the data from, or you have to say where you got the help from. Just say it. I was expecting 3 slides that said you'll have 1 minute to 2 minutes to present. They were like, present? I'm like, yeah, it's great. I'll take a picture of you presenting, I'll send it to you. It's great for your curriculum vitae, your resume. You know, these are great skills. I'm helping you out too in that sense. It's really great. And I will say I was humbled. I was blown away with what these students did. We went for 1 day to practice. I said, here's the curve. So for half the class, I said, let's walk over there so you know where it is, and you can touch the screen, play with the stuff, be behind, because what you see on the monitor isn't exactly what you see on the whole thing. So I wanted them to get acclimated. They talk to each other, talk about your ideas. And so they got 30 minutes to do that. And then the next reservation was for the whole class period. I almost didn't have enough time, 90 minutes. We were rushing some people to get through. Because look what they did. Look at this. She was interested in iPhone sales. And I was like, what is that software? It was Presentia. I was like, I didn't even know that. I learned so much. It was so fun. And now, these people in the audience, they're actively listening because I gave everybody a sheet of paper. I said, who is up there? What's their name? What's their title? What was the most interesting thing? What did you learn? And how could you tell them that what questions did you have to kind of tell them, here's more information that you could put on it next time. Well, we'd really like to know blank, fill that in. Give them that feedback form when they're done. Don't sign your name to it, just hand it to them. So everybody had a feedback form when they got done. And then I took a picture of them and sent them the picture. So they had this really great feedback of what they knew. And I was blown away with how much they did. So I got like 10, 12 slides. Now this guy, he did bacteria growth. He's working with a professor. I was like, oh man, look, he's got pictures, he's got the curve. I was like, oh man, they gave us information, they set us up, and then tears of joy, people, tears of joy. That's all multivariate calculus. She took a picture of her work and put it up there. I was like, oh my God, she was working through her work. So that was exciting to see. I mean, who does that? Like I never expected that. I wanted them to turn their work into me, but don't present it because we're all doing the same thing anyway. We're all doing the same process, but she just wanted to go through it because she was so proud of herself that she did that. Her work was on dolphins in, not dolphins, manatees in a certain area of Florida where there's springs, and she was there on vacation in the summer with her family, and she had ended up talking to one of the guides and got a whole bunch of data then, and she was like, cool, I would love to just do some analysis on that data of how the population changes at different times of the year. And I thought, oh, that was really neat, and it was really great. This guy's a skateboarder, and so he was doing a lot of physics stuff, like work and friction and power. This was an animation. If I was thinking quick, I would have hit video. Like he actually animated something inside a PowerPoint slide. So these are skills I don't have. And I was like, wow, how'd you do that? Like, so a lot of students were asking those kinds of questions too. And what was amazing was to see that these students went way above and beyond. But I gave them bonus points, like that's a 25 points. Like I can't even give you just 20 because you didn't do just the minimum. That's like a 4+ if I'm assessing you. And so the piece that was the most humbling was this stuff. Like I could put 45 pictures in here of every single student doing something totally different. They found funny pictures. They were engaging in front of the audience. It was just, it was kind of funny. You know, it was just like in class. They were silly and goofy, but they were serious about their work, serious about the conclusions, and we spent an hour and a half in the curve doing that. It was so amazing, and I thought, wow, every student should get that opportunity. And they were explaining their work, and they took the time to do it, and I loved that it was so positive. It was so positive, and almost every student had something that was unique. So this was not a study of any sort. This was just my harebrained idea. How could I flip the class so it's not a horror film for these people? You know, so that I want them to come in scared. So I would love to somehow figure out how to quantify what's qualitative. Or how do I study qualitative data, because that's not my area of research. So how could I measure the content understanding, maybe pre and post tests, maybe some non-calculus problems just to see how people think in the beginning, and then give that again to see how they think at the end. Or maybe science questions, but through the language of math, and now they've restructured some of their schema. Maybe that there's something in there that's reorganized. And now they're like, ooh, I see that this is what I would do now very, very clearly. I would love to follow these students, maybe longitudinally study them through their science classes. Does it help in Chem 1, Chem 2, Gen Chem? Does it do something in Orgo for them? Does it help them on the PCAT? Are they going to be doing some of that stuff? I have students come and tell me randomly, just the ones that come back. But is there any way I could also expand the outside work? You know, measure differences in conceptual understanding, like through the outside work. Can I do more of that? Does that take away from the content? I don't really know. But what I have found is that being engaged with the student and being passionate and being excited, they come right in. They're like, yay! Like they follow your vibration. And so if I come in and I'm always excited and I'm always working problems, they're going to come working too. And then those students that you have them, they just stand there. And I walk up to them and I go, here's a pencil. I watch some paper too. You know, and so they're like, all right, you know, like they just kind of get right in there. You know, one guy is funny. I walk up to him, he goes, did you bring me a pen? Like, because I think it's kind of this running joke, so I brought him pink yesterday. So I'm pretty sure next week he'll have his own pen, you know. But it's funny how you start to see the personalities of the students kind of emerge, and then they come and they do some really great things. I have students that have come and told me they've gotten into Rutgers with programs, Princeton, Harvard, REU studies, at University of Illinois, and it's fun to follow these people along and just see how they really want to do more math. There's a student now, she's a psychology major, imagine, she's like, but I want to do some quantitative now because I know I can do math. I never really thought of that, but now I can see it. And I don't really know what she means by see, but she's starting to maybe follow through, and I love that thinking, and to me that's the outreach of the math, and so anybody can do it. If I could do it, anybody can do it. And so I want them to have that and ask each other that and be the best scientists that they can, because they've got a lot of problems to solve. They're open-ended now. That, you know, I'm leaving them some serious problems. Like, I'll be dead before some of this is solved. So I love that, and I feel like that's important to me, and that's kind of really just what I wanted to share. So if you have any questions.
Thank you, Rebecca, and I guess we are opening this time now for discussion, and it could be among ourselves and questions for Rebecca, and so it was meant for Rebecca to start the discussion.
I have 10 questions.
10 questions, okay, oh!
But I don't want to monopolize
Okay.
so somebody else can go
But your
ahead.
questions can engage the rest of us into the
Okay.
discussion.
That might, yeah, and that might change. We'll leave it there, I guess. Go, first question.
So do you think that graduate students can adopt this teaching method?
Say that one more time. How do you...
Yeah, do you think that graduate students
Graduate
who are, you know, DAs can adopt this teaching method?
I I absolutely think so. I think anybody can. I think it's a matter of, to me, for math specifically, because math doesn't exist in a world by itself. It just doesn't hang there. It has to be the math of biology, the math of science, of physics, of music. It's beautiful, and I think that we owe it to the graduate students to have them see it so that they can, it's not just a step-by-step instrumental process. We owe it to educate our graduate students to do that, because I'll tell you, when I finished my undergraduate degree, I thought I was so smart. I took analysis. I mean, I did everything that math majors did. I just did my electives in education, and I got into 7th grade, and some kid said, "Hey, why is negative times negative positive?" And I was like, "Crap." I never asked what. Like, so I went back to grad school because I thought somehow I need more education, you know, and I still never got it until I got out. And I wish somebody, I know how to do all this stuff, but I wish somebody had started connecting it. It's only been through this BioCalc part where I've actually had help from the scientists, and they're teaching me in these places that are very uncomfortable. Yeah.
So to comment on that, your presentation and a lot of the other presentations at the conference kind of pushed me to practice what I preach, because I'm all about active learning and stuff like that, but with the time I have in the classroom, it's hard to really do that, and so I made sure it was okay, but this week was the first time I did.
How much time do you have? I don't know.
50 minutes.
50 minutes.
Once a week, and then
That's
there's a
structure's
last.
tough. That's tough.
Right.
Because I have an hour and 45, to put this in perspective. I have an hour and 45, and she's got 50.
Actually, that was my question. I was waiting,
It's tough.
to see, if we can implement, or we have the flexibility of changing the model, what we are practicing in that redesign program. I actually do some things in my class, but I can only limit to 5 to 6 minutes. And already, I'm kind of crunching for the time, because I do want to do things with my students, and they love it. They ask for it more and more, but I cannot do it because of the time limitation.
So
One of the
how do you
things that
accommodate time?
Aubrey showed me,
So
and
what
I
did you
actually
do?
love what she's put together so far, is
Learning
it's somewhat of a flipped type thing.
So what did, now
Where they
explain.
actually, she put together some worksheets.
gonna
Right.
share.
She put together, well, I'm sorry.
No, it's
But I'm just explaining,
Yeah.
but she put together some worksheets that the students actually go through and that help them to, discover on their own. But, just, they have to do a little bit ahead of time.
Yeah.
But it also
That's-
gets them very actively
That's what
involved,
my
and I
question
think it's
was.
great.
How do you
I
get
love
them
it.
engaged?
So what did I do? I'll tell you. So after the conference, when I said I was kind of pushed to be like, I'm all about this, but I haven't been doing it, and I feel like I'm kind of being hypocritical about it. So I wanted to try it, and so what I had them do, like the week after the conference, was I sent out a survey online, and they answered just a bunch of random questions, like the simple ones, male or female, how old are you, but then like how many cups of coffee do you have a week, how many times do you exercise a week, how many GSU sports game have you been to, things like that. And so I got all this data and compiled it and analyzed it, so now I have all this data to use. This week was confidence intervals, so I gave them an activity for 40 minutes they just constructed their own confidence interval about the proportion of females. And so I had them at the beginning guess like, how many females do you think there are on campus? Like proportionally, what do you think is true?
Wow.
And then I told them what we got from the sample, and then I was like, okay, so now work through that sheet, and she read through it, but it was just the activity, explaining like, what are we even doing? What is a confidence interval? Because every time I've tried to teach it before, eventually they get it after like they do the problem so many times, but in class, whenever I get to the end of it, I can just tell on their faces, they're just like,
They've muddled through.
right.
And now you have them doing it, and they're actively asking you questions.
And I will say, like you said at first, when I was like, okay, get into your groups, there were a couple classes that just like sat there, and I was like,
I know, right?
get into your group. And I was like, start moving your desk. I was like, do you even know each other? Get to know each other. So they finally moved, and then at the end of class, the ones that had resisted at first, I was like, okay, yes or no to the activities, and they were like, it was kind of fun, and I was like, okay.
See what I mean? Like, and that's so good because you have to be so brave. Like that first day of class, I go sit by somebody, and they're like, what? Like, sit by somebody, and then here's bonus point. I don't know anybody's name. Introduce me to all the people in your group. What's interesting about them? you know. And so then, once they get that bonus point, they're all about, oh, I know so-and-so, and then they'll be in chemistry class, or like, especially for your class, they're so diverse, they might have never
They
met
have
each
a lot
other.
of classes together. I figured
they
out
do?
over a lot of
That's
semesters, because I guess they're all, typically a lot of them are freshmen, so they all have classes together
And
too in
that
other places.
Community, I'll tell you what,
Freshman learning
it's so
community.
packed,
Mhm.
yeah, and it's so bigger, it's so much bigger than math because
Yeah.
it helps retention,
Mhm.
keeps your students in college. They're gonna get the notes from somebody because they know somebody, and I have found that they come to class, they have buddy systems now, and these are things that are so much bigger than the math than I actually thought in the first place. So I have very few W's, and I'm wondering, do you think that after this we'll have less W's?
Like after what
Yeah,
I'm
like
trying
after,
to
say
do.
you try this, yeah, so you keep trying it.
So what I'm gonna do, I think, is do a lot of that for this section just to see how they do on the test. And I know there's a lot of different factors in terms of comparing this test grade to last semester's test grade, but I can at least have an idea. But then I figured next semester I'm gonna start doing group activities, if it's okay, from the beginning,
Each
because even one of them made a comment that she was, and maybe not each week, but like at least one per like test. Because
That's
one of
so
them made
good.
the comment like, I liked it because I got to know the people in the classroom, and like now I feel more comfortable with them, so I can study with them. And like now I'm like, I wish I had done it on week one.
And there's
Like,
psychological studies that say, for little kids, they don't learn unless they're safe in their environment.
mhm.
Like, and I had like, when the whole K, like when my kids first started school, I'm like, I didn't know anything. And that's huge, their basic needs are met, they can ask a question freely, no one's gonna judge them, because they already have a group.
Mhm.
So if everybody else howls at them, they still have their core group in their
Yeah.
pod.
And what's good about the way the breakout sessions work is that the people that are in class with them, that they're working on these activities with, are also in the lab with them. And so in the lab, we encourage them to talk to one another, but it's most of the time they don't really do it unless it's just like a little bit of in pairs. But I think I'm gonna
That's great.
more encourage them to be like
And
work in groups in the lab.
Was it hard to do, to take a lot of time for you to build that worksheet? Because that's a question grad students will always ask. I don't have a lot of time to put this together, and maybe if there was like a shared bulletin board where we could like have
Yeah.
a little bit.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, I think.
Yeah,
that's
we
what-
should actually
That's
have
one thing that's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Once, someone's developing, and maybe someone else can develop it for something else,
Right.
then we can all
Gotcha.
share.
So
the
did it
materials.
take a lot
Because
to
we-
do?
I'm pretty quick in Word. I don't use LaTeX, so it didn't really take that long.
That's good.
And it mainly is how I understand it is like how I was having them work through it. Not that that's the best way, but I think it's at least
But
better
that's a
than being
start.
like do it this way and write on the board.
I was gonna ask you, do you find it harder to teach that way?
Actually
Is it
no,
harder?
because I like what you were saying and what we've been trained to do well is to go like around to each group and talk to them and just facilitate them and make sure that they're on the right path and be like, why did you get that there, and like what does that make sense to you, and things like that. And I heard so many more like, oh, that's why. Like I've never heard that many before
And
in
then,
my
and, then,
classroom.
and don't you feel good when you leave?
Yeah.
Because you go, oh my gosh, like I planted a seed, because
Mhm.
then they're inspired to do more, and when you know more, you do
Mhm.
more like that. That's so good.
So anyway, but I was just gonna
Alright.
share that you inspired
That's nice.
me. So thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, we will have probably one of the panels, one of the seminar talks to be a graduate teaching assistants panel, where
Mm.
we'll have opportunity for various graduate teaching assistants this semester to share, because I observed many classrooms, probably 26, 27, how many graduate students we have now. And I have seen a lot of interesting things that our graduate students are doing in their classrooms. And I think we have enough people to share what they're doing
Yeah.
in terms of active student engagement. And I think this is the whole point is of learning, for learning from each other's work and sharing.
And there are
Being
so many of
getting
us,
familiar
yeah,
with-
there's so many of us doing amazing
Yes,
things that I would never
absolutely.
know unless this is,
Mhm.
you know, and I've met some colleagues as well in Paco here, he has met with me several times, what he's doing in 1101 is
Yeah.
amazing. He needs
So,
to come and
hopefully
talk about
you'll
that
get
too.
And learning what
We'll-
these other
we'll
things
get to
are, you
learn
get to
also
decide which
more.
works for
And-
you
and-
as an
yes.
instructor.
Mhm.
More questions? Do we have time for more
Yes,
questions?
yes, we
Do
can
you
have
another one?
Question 2 and 3, I'm going to merge them. So you talked about free thinking. You said literally, free thinking is not safe for them.
It's not safe.
Yeah, okay.
Because
And also you talked about
Yeah.
anger management. No, that's super important
It's
because
so
in my
true.
method, I mean, I have had
Right.
hard times at the beginning and I have developed a whole method to manage anger. So I would like to hear how do you do it? How do you handle anger, especially in the first month or 2 weeks?
Those first 4 weeks are tough because it looks different on many different people. But I go back to, and I give them words for it. I say, you're not allowed to free think because there's a right answer and then you fail. You fail and then you either get an F on your